Welcome to Soveryn Podcast, the voice of independent Luxembourg.
So hello, this is Paul Comrie, host of Soveryn Podcast, where we discuss the highs and lows of startup culture, being independent and building a brand. If you're a decision maker at any level in the value chain, we want to hear from you. So this morning in studio we have Mr. Guillaume Chatelain.
Hello, Paul.
Who is the director and founder of the Duchy, a Luxembourg-based metaverse that is inspiring local actors to buy a digital store and, as they say, make it your own. It is coming soon in the second half of 2023.
Exactly.
So before we get into the questions about your company, I've written a small introduction, and this is how I would, having met you once before at a meet and greet, this is how I tried to understand it. So with the tagline, explore, invite, monetize, the Duchy is one of several candidates vying for a slice of the lucrative Luxembourg market. Chatelain regularly gives presentations and meets the press and is actively promoting a pioneer mentality for his metaverse. His journey to me is interesting for one of several reasons, most notably his background as an engineer and in code. So in some sense, he is emblematic to me of someone who goes from a technical background and traverses all the way to being a founder and a frontman. This to me is also exciting because it speaks to me of what some in the English press are referring to as La French Tech, which is an exciting development coming particularly out of post-Brexit Paris. So, before we get into your story and your business, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, hello everybody, I'm Guillaume Chatelain, 35-year-old. I've been active in the, I would say, startup industry for already 5 years, I would say. And yes, I've always tried to, always kind of being creative, even when I was working. And I try now to apply this kind of creativity to new concepts and emerging concepts. And for 1 year now, I've been involved in these metaverse projects, which I find very interesting. And I really want to develop it for the country. And I think it's like a disruption for communication.
Nice, that's interesting. So before we get into this topic of disruption for communication, when was the company founded? Are there any other members other than yourself? What would you refer to it as the sector? Is it communications? And what is our topic today? So how about that?
No, this project, maybe you've heard about this Facebook who rebranded itself Meta. So it's like it was a really change for the market to try to develop, I would say, a virtual world, maybe a global virtual world with one company having a big chunk. But the idea would try to go with now this kind of VR headset, this kind of hardware to get more immersive into these digital worlds. And it made sense at that time with the COVID period that we enjoyed and socialized throughout this kind of virtual environments. And you said that I was like founder of the Duchy. I have also another partner who helped me building that universe, which is Matthias Koiner. He had experience in this VR subject, and when he heard about Zuckerberg making this move, he said, but why about Luxembourg? We should do the same. We can create an app and try to create a virtual world for the country. And this idea emerged in February last year. And at that time, I was trying to make also another startup in the Web2 traditional SaaS, I would say, software. And I heard about this idea, and then I was like, okay, interesting. And then I realized the potential in terms of communication. And I was like, it's because the information is much more, I would say, for the brain, it goes much more quicker when it's visual compared to text. This is what the metaverse enables, to have something much more, I would say, impactful and visual. So I was like, okay, yes, definitely that's a bright idea. So keep it this thing, because my partner used to be this kind of, I would say, make frog leaps every 6 months. He has an idea, and if it doesn't come up, he jumps to another one. And I was like, okay, keep this thing. We're gonna team up together, but stay focused, and we're gonna I'm gonna help you make business. So yeah, we started last year, and it took us 1 year from making quickly a prototype to something now which is gonna start to be online. Yes.
Okay, so would you consider that, one of the questions I tend to ask people when they're presenting their activity to me is I say, what is the pain point your business is solving for the consumer? Would you say that one of the pain points you are solving is visual communication rather than written communication?
Yes, if you see like how advertisement was made on TV, it was really like a change compared to traditional, I would say, newspapers, and this is like a big market for advertisers. And I think it's going to be the same kind of revolution for metaverse, because it's you can of course see something more visual, but of course you are more this kind of the difference between like traditional advertising on TV and metaverse is that you are more or less captive in front of your TV. You can't do anything than just watching. But in the metaverse, you can just you have the influence of moving, going into one store or going to the wildlife and not consume. I mean, this is your choice to go to something. You are more holder of your content and your actions, which is, I think, like something people want to readopt. So I think this is where it's a major disruption here.
And what is the pain point that the business or the consumer is looking for? Is it that they are looking for a new platform for visibility, or is it more about the consumer who wishes to, as you say, engage with something that is disruptive and gives them a more immersive experience?
Yeah, I think it's more or less this kind of approach. But we need to say that it's a bit controversial, because if you talk about metaverse to some people like gamers, they will say, but it's not really like something new. I mean, we're already playing in kind of GTA or League of Legends, and they're like, no, I mean, why should you try a general world? So definitely metaverse is something adapted to, I would say, a broader audience than just gamers.
Okay.
It's just a first, I would say, a point of entry. But I mean, what does it solve in terms of pain point? I would say it's more like I think it's still for like a B2B thing. It's more like for advertiser, for commerce, I would say, more than users. We tended to say that it's good for users to go to concerts or to things like this, but technologically, it's still a challenge to achieve this kind of performance. So I think it's going to be more interested for businesses, and then it will like go to more B2C segment.
Is the challenge in part like the latency, the amount of the power it takes to be able to provide things in real time?
Yeah, and then your question suggests this kind of technology choices, because now it's the metaverse world is very, I would say, scattered. You have different kind of technologies. You have one who doesn't require a web browser. You can connect only through a VR headset. Yeah. And so this kind of, I would say, Facebook world, maybe you know about. Yeah. And you have also others who are like, I would say, something which is built on the internet. So, I mean, normally web browser is very light. So normally it has been built not to support this kind of Netflix stream. So this is where you're going to see things like, I would say, this traditional Second Life, that first, I would say, kind of metaverse experience, which was based on WebGL. And you have now tools which are going to that thing. The only drawback is that in terms of quality, it's more like polygons or cubic. But if you want to go into something very interesting in terms of 3D, then yes, it's a stream. So then it requires graphical resources. And this is where there's a technological challenge and also barrier of entry. So once you're able to solve these problems, you can have like, an advantage compared to the competition.
Okay, that's very interesting. That takes me to my next question is, where are you positioning yourself, and where's the growth in your sphere? Where do you think you're going?
When my partner created that universe, he wanted to create a metaverse premium for Luxembourg, because of course Luxembourg has it's quite wealthy country, and people tend to like this kind of premium luxury high-end solution. So he decided to go with this I would say motor engine, which is Unreal Engine, which is constantly trying to adapt and make things very realistic with this 3D game engine. And so we developed this technology based on that software. And this is the quality we want to render to our customers. It's not about making something fantasy cubic-like. It's something more realistic, adapted to also geographical location, and which is appealing for companies to enter.
So where do you think, what are some of the trends that are happening in your sphere? If you keep on with the way you are now and where you're going, what will be some of the trends you see? So firstly, I think you've mentioned that it will be more, I think, about the visibility of brands to connect initially than, for example, complicated performances in live.
Yeah,
right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's more about, coming in, getting to know each other, acquiring some visibility and positioning.
I would say it's more or less, and of course it's also because it's a financially it requires a lot of money.
Of course.
Only these companies like Meta are able to make this universe when hundreds of thousands of people can connect at the same time, which is difficult. Also, for I would say smaller actors like European actors, it's difficult to invest in hardware. So we are more like bound to now restrict ourselves to visualization solution. This is where we need to get the most of based on visualization solution.
What is that? What is visualization solution?
I mean, playing with this kind of, I would say, motor engine and trying to build a world based on this.
Okay.
But no acquire like this kind of Oculus brand when you're going to make some hardware stuff, which requires, more capital.
Okay. And speaking about capital, where is the growth, do you think, in your sector in the future, and how would you plan to meet that? You are a startup, and you've mentioned about it's something I deal with every day, which is that there are always limitations to budget. We're always facing difficulties, and in fact, most of the developments that come out of it are faced because we have to operate within a restriction. So what are the restrictions you are facing, and how are you planning to meet them?
Paul, I think it's interesting to make a comparison with how to build a website, a traditional website in the 2000s. Maybe you know that kind of graph. It required, I would say, $5 million to create a website in the early 2000s.
I've never heard that.
Wow. That was the case.
Is that right?
Yes, that was because that created that kind of big web bubble in the 2000s, and then in the 2010s it just required $500,000, and then now it reduces to $50,000. So even now, you can just go to WordPress and you can build yourself a website if you want to have an e-commerce very easily.
Yeah, sure.
So the barrier of entry has reduced and it's much more easy. In the metaverse, we are facing the same kind of trend. It's still, I would say, capital costly to create a universe. So if you don't start with a lot of capital, it's difficult. So in our case, we are not like this kind of people who have 100Ks in front of us. So what we are doing is that we are trying to outsource a bit. And it's also interesting to know that in Europe, we are still a bit lacking of this kind of, or in Luxembourg and some neighboring countries, we are lacking of this kind of human capital, people who knows about game development. This is something which is not really developed, and we need to find and be, I would say, smart and adapt to use other people. Of course, my aim would be to have a really, skillful team. I think we need 4 persons at least to have a metaverse.
So you need a full-time developer who's really into games.
Yes, exactly, because elements of gamification which can create an interesting stuff or interaction with a company who wants to make a promotion, that requires some game elements. So far we created this word, but we need to have this 4th person. So just if you want me to explain who are the 4 persons, I would say first is like someone who creates the business and makes the business. Second one is more, I would say, a creative director, product manager, who handles the whole world. The third one would be in charge, I would say, of the infrastructure and servers. And the 4th one is, I would say, a game developer.
Would you say that the game developer, for someone like me who I build websites with my company. 3-4 years ago, we were building expensive sites. I won't say the brand, but they were expensive code-based software. And now we're working primarily on codeless software, and it brought the cost way down. Would you see that the future of coding in many ways is in gamification?
That's interesting question. I don't know. I think it depends on your study case and what you want to achieve. If you want to make a job board, for instance, then you don't require to really recreate and reinvent the wheel, because now there are solutions or like even plugins on WordPress to do this kind of monster-like websites. So you need to really think about, am I doing something which is mathematically complex, which needs a lot of data, and then based on this you should say, okay, I need to have a full IT team, or I can really make it very cheap. So you need to really understand the concepts, and based on this, you will adapt. For gamification, I still think that we need to have people and human capital, and that's an important part of the metaverse.
And right now, where are you sourcing talent in this area? Are you going to other big centers like Berlin, or are you going to Eastern Europe? Where are you going to find talent right now?
Yeah, I like to mention one country which now is having big trouble but have a lot of human capital is Ukraine. You can find a very good class and very good talent there. What we basically do is that we go to this kind of very, very famous outsourcing, I would say, websites like Fiverr or Upwork, and we try to find talents based on this. They can come from whichever continent. I would say Asia, of course, because they are more digital native than us, Europe. And yes, we try to compare and then we make tests. So it's like it's a test and try and test. We never know if it's going to be good. Yeah. But the thing is that when you outsource, it's difficult to. These people are working for several projects. They don't work only for you. So you don't really know if they are charging well, if it takes a lot of time. I mean, they say 8 hours. Did it take them 2? And you have a difficult thing to have a roadmap. So it's difficult to say make it before this kind of deadline, unless you pay a lot. So you are more or less dependent of how long it takes to them. So you need to adapt, and you can't go as fast as you would if you had someone in your team you pay. Course. Yeah. So that's the pros and cons of making this thing.
So if I was to I know it's hard to wrap up such a big subject quickly, but what we're trying to offer in the initial podcast with people is really a bite-sized comprehension of what you're doing in the Duchy. What I say to people who are listening, which is that this is a place, if you're a brand or an individual who's interested in the Luxembourg tech sphere, where that they can explore something, they can invite others to explore with them and therefore gain visibility. And of course, there's a chance to monetize that. Would that be an accurate way of representing the Duchy, which is it's an immersive digital platform such as we've seen through other static platforms such as Facebook, but it's offering a new and immersive reality. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I like to say that metaverse brings another dimension to your business. Okay. But by dimension, I just mean the third one. Yeah, because now it's just like traditional website, and now it's about entering a new world. The main advantage for commerce is that they can really differentiate themselves in a virtual world compared to traditional business. Okay. And this is very important because now in standard, websites, you can do good, CSS, good layout, rendering, but it's difficult to differentiate yourself because you are in the same kind of media. You need to type a URL, and it's like a web. You need to go through a browser, and it's very, very conventional. And now metaverse, you can have your own architecture. If you want to be creative, if you want, let's say you want to take a dental practitioner, then you can make like a tooth. Really like a tooth building when you see this kind of stuff, and it's very creative. You can't really do this in real life. So I took this example, but you can make this for a car manufacturer. So it's up to the company to really create something which really differentiates itself and show also how you are out of the norm, I would say.
Finally, just feeding off of what you had said, what is interesting to me there is that a lot of the work I'm doing currently is for omni-channel and SEO. And the fact that you are providing a world without a browser is very interesting to me. That you can, it allows, as direct to consumer as the internet traditionally is, you're offering another layer that's increased direct to consumer.
Yes. But it's a semi-revolution. Why it's a semi-revolution? Because in terms of business, we will be faced by the same challenge traditional Web 2 has been faced with. I would say monetization, as you mentioned, and also kind of conversion. Let's say if someone goes into a pavilion, does that mean that he's intending to buy? Does it buy stuff? Why am I paying for metaverse? Is it giving me profitability? Mm-hmm. So the same thing for Google or having a website or investing into Facebook ads. Is it going to be the same for metaverse? So I think that metaverse actors should quickly kind of create these analytic tools which is going to be the same as in traditional Web 2.
Do you know if there are analytic tools already being formed for the metaverse?
Good question. I'm not sure for like Decentraland or Sandbox, the traditional big actors, did they implement these things? But I can tell you that in practice, it's not that complicated to do. Sure. I mean, based on a game developer, it's like based on where is the person and what is it interacting with. But this is important for companies.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. I hope we get to have you back to talk more about this topic. For our audience, we are trying to provide both a glimpse of an interesting business in the country, but also of the founder individually as a person. If I can ask you, I've tried to identify some like universal questions that I think are relevant to entrepreneurs. But for example, being an entrepreneur is tough. So what is it that wakes you up in the morning? What keeps you motivated? Like we've mentioned cycling. What gets you going? Like how is it that you have found the wherewithal and the courage to launch this?
It's different to every personality, but yeah, it's interesting to also know the difference between a startupper and an entrepreneur. A startupper is someone who has an idea, who doesn't, I think in my definition, because startup, you know that there's like a controversy about that word.
Yeah.
But I think it's like when you create a startup, you're not really sure of the business model. I would say there's not like I would say an easy formula you can apply. Let's say you want to sell baguettes in a bakery. I mean, you are an entrepreneur, but you're not a startupper because you know how to sell it. You know more or less the people you want to sell it, and that's, I would say, traditional business, which is there's nothing negative about this. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Don't take me wrong.
No.
But I mean, this is the difference with the startupper, where the person is more or less something where, I mean, you probably try to incentivize the need. There is no. Actually, the need is not like no one says, yes, we want to have metaverse for by all means. You need to show by, I would say, presence, media, that it's something, I would say, a new world you need to enter. And that's going to be fascinating. Yeah. But I always been tempted to do this in that way, to create a bit the need to show that there is another way to show this. And if you see in the last 20 years, let's say the example of Instagram, etc., no one asked for it. It's just like someone who just jumped into it, but no one asked for this kind of needs. Yeah.
So I think if I to extract from that, what motivates you a bit is that you are a pioneer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you always constantly need to be, I mean, and you go in this kind of creative, being a kind of artist, but as you know, to be an artist and to be a businessman, that makes two.
That makes two, yeah.
That makes two.
But the best are both.
The best are both, exactly. It's the same as when you say with a startup, it's not about the idea, it's about the execution. No, it's about both.
It's both.
If you have the idea and the execution, you're a star.
Nice. Who or what has supported you in this journey? Do you have a support system? Do you, or maybe the support system doesn't have to be somebody. It can also be, it can be exercise, or it can be something. What do you draw on to maintain that equilibrium?
As a startup founder, sometimes you feel your journey very lonely, and I think maybe you know about this.
Absolutely.
And you are very tough into you need to report, you need to pay the VAT, the invoices. You are faced with a lot of things which are so administrative burden, and sometimes you're lost. And when you go to take a drink with your fellows and other workers, you're like, okay, looks like they have a kind of easier life than me. No, what is important is always to get a lot of sociability with others which are not startups, because they believe also startups as well, but a lot of people, just to reconnect and see that you are not alone in your world. You need to compare ideas. Also try to speak with a lot of people who are from the different sectors. Could be business angels, could be mentors. These people can help you refocus, or sometimes takes perspective when you're frustrated, because startuping is a lot of with frustration.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
So you need to sometimes to really regroup, or just leave it aside and rethink. So I think it's important to have this kind of social environment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. You mentioned a word in there, so it was part of another question, which is, can you recall an instance in your journey where someone was a mentor to you, and vice versa? Did you help somebody else along the way?
For the other side, I would say I just relate to my partner. I've known him for 5 years, and I knew that he was some kind of person who doesn't stick to a project. And I was like, yes, I want to do something with you, even though I knew that I would be confronted with this kind of behavior, who wants to jump sometimes out of the wagon where it's already in full speed. Why? But I was like, no, let's try to do something together. So I think I helped selling that universe. Otherwise, it would just have been a prototype and nothing out of the box. It wouldn't have left the box. So yes, this is where I helped. Maybe my partner, and to be helped. Yes, it happened to me when I was a coder. Sometimes you were especially the first time when you are like a developer who has not studied in I would say IT school, which is my case. I'm more a generalist engineer, but not an IT engineer. And when I made my first website, it was not a WordPress. It was like something I really made for my own. And I was, you know, you need to like send files and make an FTP server. And I was like, oh my God, the website is off. And people will say, and you are like you're very anxious because people see that the page is broken. But at the end, you're taking like anxiety for nothing because no one is actually visiting your website. So don't worry. And so it's about just put like the anxiety away. There's no like it's not a matter of your life. And this is. I think with the years passing, you tend to take distance and know, how to handle problematic solutions.
That's nice. And how does Luxembourg fit into your story?
It happened by coincidence. I would say. I'm not sure if some people they come Luxembourg for money. Some people because they want to join their partner. Yeah. But for me, it was an accident. Okay. I tell you the story. I used to work in the banking industry, and I started my career in Paris, and I had a good career, but then I had some problems. I had a little bit lack of confidence, and I had friends. I made some sales, some deals with Luxembourg, and then there was a job offer. I applied to it. And in this process, I arrived second. And that was the first, and then only they should have selected the first candidate. And that candidate said, no, sorry, I have other opportunities. And then they recalled me to say, by the way, are you available? Okay, then can you come in 3 days? And then I just packed my stuff from Paris and I arrived, I rushed into it. I even slept into, one friend into his bed. So that was a bit crazy, but it's like a kind of big rush. And then, yes, I started to live there, and I think that now it's quite okay. Yeah. But Luxembourg is interesting because, I think you tend to make deals in general with your network.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You have people who help you open doors. Yeah. Thinking that the human it's not interfering would be like naive. No, sure. It's about networking. But here, because it's a small village, it's even more applies to this country. Okay. So interesting to know.
Okay. And if you could have a talent or a superpower, what would it be?
These last 2 years, some friends advised me to read this kind of American books, The Ultimate Sales Machine, or like the Sales Story. And I would love to behave like this American person they describe into these books. Yeah. Like to be a machine, very well organized, who knows how to sell, to apply the same approach every time. But the fact is that it's so difficult. It looks like a completely fictionary character. Yeah. And it's really very difficult to stick with your, I would say, your to-do list. Do everything like this. And then you keep yourself. You probably learned and read a lot about this. But I wish I would be this kind of person. But in fact, I stay just a human being. But it's okay. and I would say maybe this kind of books are adapted to this American way of thinking. Yeah. Like also this Anglo-Saxon way. In Europe, people tend to be more conservative. So you think that things gonna be signed in 15 days, but then it takes 3 months, and then you're like, I didn't thought it would take me so much time. So you need to deal with this, and also take perspective with your business.
Oh, very nice. Well, listen, Guillaume, it was really a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for taking time and coming to speak to us. Yeah. I hope that we will get to have you back. I know that there's some upcoming big events for you. There'll be in June. There'll be some big events in Luxembourg, I believe, towards the end of June.
Yes, exactly. We want to. We're gonna participate to the biggest exhibition here, and this is where we want to show the village and the first, I would say, stores who are in our village. Yes.
Yeah. So hopefully we get to have you back to discuss the updates on that, and best of luck for you going forward this year.
Yes, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.